listening to Reset Race. You now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. What? Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake. Lineage go back to US Southern plantations. Penniage, Jim Crow, and mass incarceration. Redline and lynchings. We are old from this nation. You're not about justice if you ain't for reparations. MG the wise one. Cousin mother intellectual. Samantha bringing fire. Anti-black, we pressing you. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies. The backbone of the country. To win, you need our energy. You gon' see. Listening to Reset Race. You now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake.
Welcome to a special episode of Reset Race, where we talk about politics, race, how those two things interact. And today we have a special guest, Mr. Steve Grumbine, if I can speak English. Steve Grumbine of Real Progressives. And we'll let him introduce himself. Steve, can you tell the folks about you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Steve Grumbine. I'm the founder of Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action. I'm also the host of a couple podcasts. Number one is Macro and Cheese, and the other is the new Untouchables, the Pecora Files. We got a new one coming out here in a few months called The S Word, so that'll be exciting, but that's who I am.
All right, well, I'll go next. Well, everybody knows me. I'm Sam, aka the Khaleesi. I hate social media, so y'all can catch me over there at me 17 trillion for as long as I last, because I don't see it happening much longer. And I'm just really excited that Steve came to talk to us today, because I feel like MMT, so with reparations, we had to do like a big education piece. I feel like MMT is no different. You literally are going to have to teach it to everybody and get them to understand it for it to move. So I'm just glad that you're here and can bring it to our audience, because me and Mud are YouTube nerds. Like we've been watching videos for years, and I read Stephanie Kelton's book, but for everybody else, like we need to bring it to them. So go ahead, Mud.
Yeah, they call me Mud. You can find me on my social media, Twitter, Instagram, Clubhouse, @of lineage. That's one word, of OF, then lineage. Yeah, I'm the creator of Bitter Dose TV. I'm actually excited about this conversation also. I think that even with the reparations piece, we do have to educate people on MMT also, because the first question everyone asks is, how are you going to pay for it? So we need to get into that. All right. Yeah, that's all I got.
All right. With that said, so I guess everybody picked up what it is. You heard Steve, and we're going to talk about MMT, modern monetary theory, something that people act as if they don't understand it, but they watch the Defense Department pay for more shit every year. So, and so somehow our taxes don't go up. In fact, they start going down. So somehow these things are getting paid for. But Steve is the expert on that. He's been a MMT crusader for a long time. It was about 3 years now, 3 or 4 years now, Steve. Yeah, 12 years. Jeez. Jeez. Well, I've only known like 3 or 4 years, so I'm the dummy. I'm behind the curve. So I guess we'll kind of dig in it with the basic stuff, Steve. Please explain to us what MMT is.
So MMT is largely just macroeconomics. It's macroeconomics minus all the, tales from the fire pit, tales from the bar stool, and all the stuff that people swear they know but they don't know. It's minus all the lies that we've ginned up in our head, and it's very boring. Ironically, MMT is probably the most boring subject on the face of the earth right now. But it's exciting because so much of what we think we know, it turns out to be fake knowledge, and MMT really cuts through that. And so what MMT does is it shows us how federal finance works, and really in any place that has a sovereign free floating fiat currency like the United States does. But in particular, it looks at the United States from 1972 to present, when we were removed from the gold standard, the Bretton Woods Accord, by Richard Nixon. Ever since then, something changed fundamentally. You've seen everything go the wrong direction. You've watched the rich get richer. You've watched the poor get poorer. You've watched us more involved in wars than we've ever been in our nation's history. You've watched a lot of things that you would like to believe wouldn't be things that our country does, happening right here in front of our faces. And we're always left with that feeling that, well, the country's broke, we can't do nice things. But you never, ever, as you stated in the beginning, you never see the country flinch when we talk about funding war. You never see the country flinch about adding money to the defense budget, regardless of whether there's war or not. Basically, anytime there is a way to give money to the rich, there's more than enough money there, whether it be for tax cuts, you name it. And we've been led to believe that there's not enough money to do great things for we the people. And MMT shows us in spades that that's completely false. That we can do anything, we can afford anything, that we can resource. If we have the people, if we have the actual goods and services, our nation can fund anything that's available for purchase in US dollars, because it creates the currency from thin air. And by creating that money from thin air and the laws that go with it from thin air, the US government is the monopoly issuer of the currency. Even when it gives charters out to banks, it alone is the currency issuer, is the monopolist. And so once you understand currency issuer versus currency user, you fundamentally understand more about economics than most economists know. Just the simple fact of, where does a dollar start and how does a dollar end? We say the birth of a dollar is congressional spending, and we say the death of a dollar is when it comes back home as a tax, because taxes functionally delete currency from the system. So MMT shows us basically that money is the least important thing we have to worry about when it comes to our federal government, because our federal government creates money out of thin air. That's how it spends. That's how it finances itself. So really what we have to focus on is not the money. The money is a joke. It's a way of keeping us down by trying to talk about the money. The real story is, do we have the real resources available for purchase, for that money that we would put into the economy? And ultimately, the real constraint is not whether or not we have the money. We can always create the money. The issue is there inflation? Do we have full employment? And are the real resources available for purchase?
Thank you,
Mud,
Steve.
you had a question about inflation, so you might as well throw that out right away.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that anyone who's kind of studied MMT a little bit, they kind of understood that we've been told this lie about how the problem is that we don't have the money. Really, the problem is inflation. And I think that my question comes is, has anyone like really figured out like what is the threshold of how much we can actually spend before we get to a point of like creating hyperinflation, or is that just something that's not really clear yet?
Well, no, so let's roll it back just a little bit, and let's start with defining what inflation even is.
Okay.
So inflation is the rise in all prices, not just the price of gas or the price of rice or the price of sodas. Inflation is the rise of all prices. If you're talking about the rising cost of a given item, whether it be eating out, whether it be, tires or housing or whatever, and it's just one thing, you're talking about what they call a relative value story, where you're talking about that specific item has gone up in price. So one of the things that MMT shows us is that it's not the quantity of money that creates inflation. What creates inflation, typically the way that we see it, is that when there is a real resource constraint. And I use this as a silly analogy because I figure young people and folks that are marginally interested in economics can handle this. So don't get wigged out when I say this. But the fact is that look at the PlayStation 5s back when they got released. They only made so many PlayStation 5s, very, very small amount of PlayStation 5s. And then what happened? The pandemic hit. And so semiconductors were short. They'd only had so many semiconductors, and that was including all the big Cisco routers and switches that fuel the internet, you name it. So PlayStation 5s were competing with all the big, telecoms that needed semiconductors. And so they couldn't produce enough PlayStation 5s for everybody that wanted a PlayStation 5. Then you look out there on eBay, you look out there on Mercari, you look out there on a couple of these other platforms that sell stuff direct, and they're asking $1,500 for a PlayStation 5. $1,500 for something that only costs $500 maybe, and that's probably overly inflated too to begin with. So why are they charging $1,500? Is that inflation? No, what they found out is that PlayStation couldn't build enough of the real resources to buy, so these people started price gouging. Okay, so they started, here, I can get, if I'm going to go to see a concert and the tickets are all sold out, but I got front row seats, I got 5 of them, face value says $20 a ticket, but I'm going to sell those things for $1,000 a seat because somebody's out there willing to buy them for $1,000 a seat. Is that inflation? I don't think that's inflation. I think that right there is a relative value story where you had a scarce amount of something, somebody had it, somebody knew you wanted it, and so you overpaid for it because there wasn't enough of them to go around. So really, at the end of the day, printing money and stuff like that, they always talk about the quantity of money. That's an old libertarian right-wing screw job that they've been telling us forever. Ultimately, when you talk about quantity of money, what they're really talking about is the amount of people that are able to exact their demand. Let's say me, you, and 500 of our closest friends wanted to buy a PlayStation 5 today, okay? And every one of us was given $500 to go buy a PlayStation 5. Well, we know there's not enough of them. And so all of a sudden we try and buy it at Best Buy. Yeah, they're sold out. We go to Target. They're sold out. Go to Walmart. They're sold out. Go to Amazon. They're sold out. Go to Mercari or to eBay, and there's somebody waving their hand saying, I've got it here for $1,500. Well, your $500 that we were all given doesn't mean a hill of beans, because at the end of the day, you needed $1,500 to buy the PlayStation 5. So it's not really a matter of how much money's in the system. It's how is it distributed? Because if the rich have billions and billions and billions at the top, but all they're doing is saving it, they're not spending it. They're not creating a resource shortage. So that's not creating inflation. Does this make sense? Like if all of us are competing for the same piece of property, we may bid that property up, but we're not going to, it's not because we have too much money printed. It's because 5 of us want that property and we have enough money to drive the price up. So that's that. A lot of times we get caught in the wrong way thinking about inflation and money. I will tell you, something like petroleum products, something like oil or gas, that they suddenly, like OPEC decides they're going to stop producing as much oil and gas. Now, all of a sudden, there is a rush for oil and gas because it's the summertime and people want to travel, whatever. Now, all of a sudden, the price of oil and gas will go up. And what's going to end up happening? Oil and gas and crude are in a million things. They're in all your cell phones, everything that your the Rubbermaid carrying baskets or laundry baskets or, anything, everything, rubbers, you name it, everything that we use is got petroleum products in it. So if the cost of that goes up, it's going to bring the price of everything up with it. So this is one of the few things that are going to have really wide-reaching effects that could create inflation. You saw that in the 70s. Hopefully that answered the question.
It definitely answered the question. I want to follow up because I think that maybe you can dispel a myth, or maybe you can go into a greater detail about this concept that I think a lot of us get scared with when people talk about government spending. They start talking about how the value of the dollar is decreasing. Can you kind of like go into, I don't know, describe what's happening or what people are trying to get at when they talk about something like that, so people might have a better understanding of what exactly is happening, so that fear isn't there?
Sure. So naturally, whenever you raise wages, okay, people get a little bit more money. And businesses will oftentimes raise prices to meet that. They're not going to they're not going to absorb that hit. They're going to pass that cost on. Okay, so that cost gets passed on. And let's go back way back to the 1900s when a loaf of bread was 25 cents or whatever, right? Well, you're still spending that money on a loaf of bread, whether it was 25 cents or whether it's $3 a loaf. Okay, you're still spending that money. So one person's spending is another person's income. This is an accounting identity. It's always true. It's always going to be true. What people oftentimes conflate with the value of the dollar is not understanding, number one, that we're not pegged to gold anymore. If we were pegged to gold, you have a finite pool of gold right here, and just like a eight slice pizza pie, right? Each slice is worth so much. But let's say we decide that we want to cut that pizza into 24 slices. Well, each slice is going to be worth less, right? That's the thinking behind, hey, if we just print more money, then the slices are going to be worth less. But we're not back to gold anymore. We're on a free floating fiat currency, meaning that we spend it by decree into existence, and the value of it fluctuates. It floats. It's not tied to a commodity. So it's impossible to debase or devalue a free floating fiat currency, number one. Number two, what is really, I think, important here is to understand what the dollar even is. And the dollar is always a tax credit to start with. So in other words, the government doesn't wait for you to give them tax dollars to spend money, because the government creates dollars out of thin air. No, we need the government to spend money into existence so we can pay our taxes. Okay. So if you think about what the value of the dollar is, the government says, I will accept $1 in payment for $1 in tax. So there's your value exchange right there, $1 for $1 in tax. And as long as the federal currency issuing government can levy a tax and maintain it, then that tax sets the value, the demand for the dollar. It's the carrot and the stick, if you will, for the economy. And so the idea that if we just spend more money that it will devalue the dollar is poppycock. I mean, the real story there becomes, what if, and here I'll softball this one for you. What if I give all ADOS folks reparations, and I give them, let's say, 20, I don't know, let's go with Sandy Darity's number. Let's say I give everyone $800,000. Just here's $800,000. Well, now every single person that received that $800,000, they may have some serious needs that they have left untended to. Generational poverty has kept them from getting teeth fixed. Maybe generational poverty has kept them from ever buying a car or buying a home or buying, clothing brand new and whatever. So now all of a sudden they're out there already spending. It's in that spending, okay, by so many people at one time that could raise those prices up. So really, when they say devaluing the dollar, you're talking about inflation. And they're talking about that subtle inflation, because over the years, we usually try to get 2 to 3% inflation. We want 2 to 3% inflation. Because if you don't have some inflation, debtors will never be able to get out of their hole. They'll always be stuck. So you always want to see some marginal inflation, and you always want to see, the economy grow to some extent. Though I have other things to say about that one based on climate change. I think you get the point, though, that if I distribute a lot of money to a lot of different people, and they all have the same needs, they want to get their teeth fixed, they want to buy a car, whatever, then you're going to have some competition, whether it be like there's not enough nurses, doctors, dentists, whatever, to satisfy that demand. But it's got nothing to do with devaluing the dollar or debasing the dollar. That is crypto talk, and that's because they're still stuck in a gold standard world that we no longer inhabit.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, Steve, here's okay. I'm going to go into conspiracy theory land, where I often am. So here's because we've seen it, like you were speaking of how when we have more money in the system, the price of particular goods will go up in order to absorb that money that's new money that's in the system, right? We saw that with education. As the federal government was putting more money in education, the price of education rose, right? So what my concern is, like right now we have this this logistics issue that is impacting our, the global economy, right? And I firmly believe, this is my 2 cents, I firmly believe that it's orchestrated, right? Because it can be orchestrated, right? I mean, I'm not talking about, a bunch of people in a room smoking cigars and drinking bourbon, talking about what we're going to do to the Negroes tomorrow, right? I mean, this is just my thoughts on. I guess there's nothing you can do about it through MMT, but is there something in MMT that says, okay, how do we impact bad actors that decide to price gouge based on more money flowing in the system? Is there something?
Yeah,
that's a weird question. I'm sorry, but that's what I got.
No, there's a lot of really important stuff to unpack there, and I think one of the big ones that we have to look at is, we have all kinds of regulation, all kinds of regulatory bodies that are intended to look through and oversee financial transactions and understand what's actually happening. And unfortunately, when you make government so small that it can be crushed by a corporation, when you try to render government so weak and puny that it can't do its job, well, you get a government that's weak and puny and can't do its job. And you saw this in 2007, 2008, when the global financial crisis hit, when all the housing market blew up. You saw the elite control fraud that took place there. This is not new. It's a very, very important thing that we all need to rally around. As much for MMT as anything, we have to rally around this to eliminate corruption, to create anti-corruption laws and to prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law, and to be able to build a regulatory body that not only is well funded, but is outside of the political process to some extent. There's a lot of talk about the Fed being independent and people not liking that. But it's really to eliminate some of the political gamesmanship that goes on. So in my mind, at some level, I think there's rational case that can be made for having plenty of money poured into not only regulation, but actual ensuring compliance, and then prosecuting bad actors. So we haven't done that in many years. We haven't trust busted in many years. We haven't actually focused on ending monopoly. And I think a lot of the problems you see come from a direct result of that. There's a book by Professor William K. Black, perfect book, called The Best Way to Rob a Bank is to Own One. And he talks at great length about how the people at the top will create perverse incentives for the people below to meet certain thresholds, sales that they would have otherwise not gone after because it would have been bad paper. But that C-level person collects all the bonuses and everything on those bad sales. And then before they have a chance to be prosecuted, quit and leave, take a big buyout, and they're gone. And this is one of the very similar things that happened during the financial crisis. So what you're talking about is really needing someone like a Ferdinand Pecora, who ran the big, huge hearings when Wall Street collapsed during the Great Depression with FDR and others, when Glass-Steagall was created to begin with. And we need to have another fearless prosecutor go after Wall Street, expose the corruption, expose the the reciprocal nature of the revolving door between the people that come in from Wall Street and serve in our banking sector. And most of these Congress critters have no idea how banking operations work. These people are hired off the street, whatever. Maybe they've gotten some talks with some people that have been around Congress for a while, but overall, many of them have never, ever once even watched those basic old school, like 70s cartoons with how a bill gets passed or anything like that. I mean, they don't even know that. So imagine them being the ones in control of managing and auditing financial transactions. It's insane. So we have to put our focus there. And yes, there are a lot of MMTers out there that are adamant about bringing regulatory reform back, making regulation chic again, and making sure compliance is right where it's supposed to be. So good thinking.
All right, I appreciate that, Steve. Sam, did you have something?
I actually do, because like I said, I told Steve, I've been watching him for a while. So over here, we started mainly with reparations, but then the left kept complaining about, well, everybody's poor and you don't care about anybody. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to start sticking my nose in your stuff. And a lot of their stuff doesn't work. So my whole thing with them is, our whole thing has been, we want reparations for us first, but we would also like to see a federal jobs guarantee paired with the UBI. But I know you have feelings about UBI. So is it just UBI by itself, or is it if you pair it? Or that was kind of my question, because I've heard how you feel about UBI by itself, which I would actually like you to kind of explain that here, because I understand why you feel that way. That's why I never talk about it without federal jobs guarantee connected. But
so I look at it like this. I look at Social Security as a basic income. Okay. It's not a U as in universal, unconditional. It's a basic income. So Social Security serves a bunch of purposes. Number one, it can be for survivor benefits. It can be for disability. It can be for retirement. It can be for a lot of things. And it can be modified. It's one of those weird laws that we can modify. So to my way of thinking, we already have a basic income. The issue is, what do we want to compensate in terms of, for a basic income? And so I think that the laws around Social Security should be modified big time. And I've got some very, very strong suggestions for getting rid of FICA altogether, getting rid of the FICA tax, which is the most regressive tax in the land. It hurts the poor more than any other tax out there. And so eliminate FICA, get rid of the cap, just fully fund Social Security at a level that not only works with the cost of living increases that are never given to Social Security recipients, but also eliminate the fake idea that somehow or another the trust funds are funding these things, and that if we don't raise the cap, Social Security will be broke. It's all a lie. It's the same spending as anything else. They've got fiscal authority that this trust fund makes the payments, but it's all just a fiscal rule. It's not even a real thing. It's fake. So all government spending is new money, and all taxation is the death of that money. So in my mind, we already have a basic income. If we want to expand it, let's expand it. What we don't already have is a federal job guarantee. And a federal job guarantee goes back to even before Martin Luther King Jr. He was a huge job guarantee advocate. What you oftentimes try to hear people say is that he was a UBI advocate, but that wasn't what he said. That wasn't what MLK said at all. In fact, he talked about a guaranteed minimum income.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is so very different because what we're talking about, he wanted everybody that wanted a job to be able to have a job, period. Did no fuss, no muss, no more prejudice, period. Set that wage at a living wage and watch the private sector now have to meet or beat that wage to pull you out of there, right? With a UBI that you typically hear nowadays, what that is basically taking a knee to capitalism, okay? That's basically saying, hey, we can't beat them. The robots are coming. Lies. The robots are coming, blah, blah, blah. We're all going to die. We got to give everybody a stipend, right?
Yang Yang, $1,000, change your
What a
life.
crock of kid. You know, that's, I was like, fight me, won't you fight me? Come on, bring it. Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready to
I've been watching you for a while, Steve. I remember you going in too. I was like, yes.
I was like, Scott Santens, come on, man, bring it. He blocked me. He was too much of a wuss. I've been on debates with all kinds of big time, and it's like, it's unassailable. The fact is that we have a basic income. We don't have a job guarantee. The job guarantee sets the wage at a living wage. Let's say, I don't like this number, but $15 an hour has a lot of energy behind it. So let's just say hypothetically that the job guarantee wage was.
Well, we're going to do hypotheticals at 25 here, at minimum 25, because at reset race, anything under 25, we want to shoot people.
Yeah,
so anything above that, we can talk
I'm
about.
up at like 30 an hour, but I'm with
you.
you.
I'll jump to 30 with you. No, I'll go with you. I don't mind going up. We can go up to 30. But anything under 25, I just want to like slap people.
But just remember, this is super important, right? Remember our story about the Xboxes or the PS5s, right? Once everybody starts having more money, this is not a horrible thing. This is just an understand what you've done thing, right? Now you know that the economy was producing goods and services at a clip that was comparable with the people that had money to spend today. Now, all of a sudden, tomorrow, you've elevated that amount of people. Forget the amount of money. The number of people now that can say, hey, that tooth that's missing, I want to get a replacement tooth. All of a sudden, you've got the line at the dentist office with people trying to get their tooth fixed, right? And this is real. If you've been around, and I've been around, unfortunately, I wish I didn't have this much personal knowledge, but when you've been without and you suffer, and you come out the other side and somebody says, hey, here's $500 to an average person that works and has a good job and whatnot, $500, it's nice, but it ain't going to change anything about their world. That person you just gave that $500 to that hasn't had a chance to pay the fine that they keep going to jail for over and over again because they miss a month and they bring them back to jail. What $500 changes their life. You know, it changes their life dramatically. And so when they don't hoard that money, they spend that money because they've been depriving themselves of needs for an awful long time. So I think that a big deal here with, the federal job guarantee or UBI is understanding what that does to the economy, what it destabilizes it in a good way, but it destabilizes it because now so many more things have to be produced. Well, what is one of the bad things about production in a world where climate change is very real, right? The more you produce, the more waste you produce and the more pollution you produce and the more carbon you produce. And so these are things that have to all be accounted for in this process. And so with a UBI, you're just giving people money and then they're forced to go out into the real world to try and find things that they can purchase with that small amount of money that they were given. However, in the federal job guarantee, these people are producing something, whether it be social value or whatever, they're producing something. And in the production of that, they're also forcing the private sector to come up, not only on the pay, but on all the different benefits. If I provide health care as part of the job guarantee, now all of a sudden, that business is either going to have to meet or beat that. And if I can get free health care because it's part of my right as a citizen to have Medicare for all or whatever, well, that business better raise my pay even more because the health care is being covered for by the government now. It's not out of their pocket. So there's a lot of real game changers here. You're literally changing the way society is. You're giving moms the ability to walk away from bad marriages where they've been beaten their entire lives and they've been afraid to leave because they didn't have the money. And they didn't want to tell nobody because they knew if they said something, people would make them leave, and they didn't have a house, and real bad decisions having to be made by people that don't have good ones. They have no good choices. All my choices suck. What do I do? Right. Well, a job guarantee now gives that person the ability to pick up, go move somewhere, wherever the hell they want to move, get a job at a living wage that day as a right, and all the benefits that go with that. You eliminate generational poverty. You eliminate businesses' stranglehold on labor. And labor now has the power to say, you know what? I'm okay working in my community. I'd rather work in my community for $20 an hour, $25 an hour, 50, whatever, than go work, drive an hour away to your stupid job where you treat me like crap. You give me no benefits. So now the job guarantee has literally set the stage for the base entry into the market. And for people that have never had a job, all of a sudden they have an opportunity. What a game changer. That is really going to put the notice to all those employers out there that in order to really get the best people, they're going to have to raise their wages and benefit package. So it's a huge win-win.
Yeah. Manufacturing's coming back to the United States. I knew it would eventually because you're not going to ship shit forever, right? And people, and you saw it in China, people aren't going to work for free forever, for nothing forever, right? So that was limited, right? And then of course you got the petrol shocks, so it costs more to ship it. So eventually we could have done it before because laws about incentives. If you we incentivize companies to leave, we can incentivize companies to come back. It's that simple, right? People say I'm crazy when I say shit like that, but we're seeing it now. But back to my story. Like here, there's a military base here. Target moved here at a big distribution center here. And then Toyota came here. And Toyota has they have, every time they set up a factory, a manufacturing factory, there's a ton of satellite companies that go wherever they go. Their suppliers go with them. Their whole supply chain moves with them. Right. So you got that. Now Amazon is coming here. So now everybody's in this crunch. And because the education system here sucks, you only have a handful of people. So now Alabama's eating shit now because they've been offering this shitty education for so long. Right. So now all these companies that came here to save money, the wages are shooting through the roof just to keep up. Right. So now you got guys starting in North Alabama at $30 an hour because of the wage crunch. Right. And now we're seeing it now and people don't know what to do. Right. Some companies say, well, we're just not going to compete with everybody. Well, OK, then you get JoJo out of the trailer park with the busted shoulder. You know what I mean? So now they're stuck importing people. Right. And it's gonna be the same old song in a little while where we need to bring people from overseas. But no, you should have fixed it here. Right. And I think what we're seeing here is much like that $25 an hour federal jobs guarantee, is that so now the competition is real here and people are understanding, okay, the real world is here now. What do we do? Now the local community colleges are scrambling, trying to get more people in through the system to feed what's going on here. But it's too late. They're about 20 years too late. But again, you can see when there's competition, you can see how it impacts everything. You know, because everybody wants to, if they got good workers, they want to keep them, right? And so you got to pay. My son, he's 19 now, and he's working as a carpenter, and he just got two $1 raises in a matter of 2 months because people were leaving. They're like, so people are panicking now. So I just wanted to share that with you. I don't know if it has anything to do with what we were just talking about, but competition is competition.
Yes, sir. I have one more thing I wanted to add about the UBI part, though, and that is that by giving someone a UBI, if I give you $1,000, right, and I say now the right wing has desperately wanted us to have a UBI for a long time. Most people don't realize that. But the right wing has desperately wanted us to eliminate the social safety nets, eliminate public programs, and give
Absolutely.
everybody, here's some helicopter money. Here's this $1,000. Now go out there and be all you can be. And
Mhm.
it doesn't take much. You can look back at Allen Iverson. You can look back at some of the oh my goodness, is it J.R. Richard? I think it is. These are guys that made a lot of money and that got taken advantage of by various people throughout time.
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, all you did was gave them money. You didn't structurally change anything. Allen Iverson could have just as easily been pulled over by a cop and shot for being black. Any number of
Yeah.
things could have still happened. Not a damn thing changed there except he had money. Okay. And when it comes to that UBI, if the things that I need cost me $1,200, but I'm only getting 1,000, I still got to go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm subsidizing a poor wage, or I've got to accept that UBI has to go way up in order to cover my needs, my basic needs. Otherwise, it's just throwing money at it, and some rich person gets to say, see, we gave them money. Why haven't they made better choices with their $1,000 UBI? Why haven't they, Chauncey? Do tell. And this is the standard we get with food stamps, is a standard we get with all that crap. They literally look down their nose and say, why didn't you do better choices? Well, the fact is that all I gave you was paper. I didn't guarantee you housing. I didn't guarantee you transportation. I didn't guarantee you food and I didn't guarantee you those things. That is the difference between a job guarantee where I'm guaranteeing things and a UBI where I'm saying, here, now you person over there who have no agency, who have been living under a bridge, have no ability at this point in time to negotiate because you don't have a network of friends. You don't have generational help to support you. You're on your own, but damn it, you're free to make that decision, brother. Now go out there with your $1,000 and make it rain, and that is the ludicrous nature. I've been working for a while. I've got degrees, and I find money to be one of the most challenging things in the world for myself. Okay. I look at people that haven't had anything, and now all of a sudden they're expected to not only know how to balance and budget their money, but also to have the good sense of knowing who to buy things for at the best price. And imagine the amount of pressure you're putting on the
Steve, are you
poor.
saying white people are bad with money too?
Oh, I'm
I
saying
thought
everybody's
in
bad with money, girlfriend.
in
I'm telling you,
America, it's only black
this is
people.
one white dude that is the worst at money. I'm really good at macro, which is hilarious because I understand economics. What I don't understand is how to avoid going under because I got some, compounding interest on some debt that I stupidly took on, and not really fully understanding what I just did because I missed some fine print. I mean, the world is out to get you. And it's just, unless you've got people out there looking out for you, it doesn't matter whether you're white or black, whatever. But I imagine it's even harder for black folk who are left without a lot of, support, generational support, just because of the way the system has been structured. Hard, tough times, man, tough.
Yes, tough times for us all. Y'all got any more MMT questions? Because Steve hit a little nerve for me, not in a bad way, in a good way.
Go for it.
And I want to go a little bit further. So because you were like, this is why, with the federal jobs guarantee, we're guaranteeing work, right? And so this is my issue with the left, right? Because they keep trying to convince me as a Black American who descends from chattel slavery that I should give up my fight for reparations and making my people whole to jump into what they're doing. But the only thing that is being pushed is free college, which is great, but without a federal jobs guarantee, which is not being pushed, that doesn't give me jobs, because for Black people, we have degrees and fewer jobs. So Black college graduates have less wealth than white high school graduates. So for us, it's like, well, you want to give us a free education?
High school dropouts.
High school dropouts, not even graduates, dropouts. So it's like, you want to give us free education, but that's not going to change anything for us. I like Medicare for all. I would like to not die, but I'd still like to not be poor. So my issue is, why with the left, how do we move to big transformational stuff because that they're not talking about that. Like the stuff they're talking about is very much so on the margins. And I feel like a lot of it's on the margins, even for poor white people. Because my question is, forget Black people, does this help poor white people in Appalachia? Because if you aren't helping them, you're not helping the bottom of my people. You're not helping my people because we're down there with them. So if you're doing middle class stuff, that's not helping poor people. So my issue right now is nobody's talking about how do we fix the poor, because Black people are poor. That's it. We are, like, the majority of us are poor.
Yep. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The fact of the matter is the reason why we're not talking about bold transformational policies and projects. We got a couple problems. Let's unpack them. Okay. Number one is we've got a belief that the country is broke, that we can't afford to do nice things. So this is why MMT is so vital to be number one. I would put MMT ahead of reparations, just to be fair. I put MMT ahead of ending wars. I would put MMT ahead of feeding the poor. I would put MMT ahead of everything. And that is because
it turns on the faucet.
Well, once you understand the way this money works, then you stop dreaming small. Now I know I can separate. You know that money's not an object, right? Right. Yeah, you know that, right? Right. And so we go through this back and forth, but then you're still like, yeah, but I still think we shouldn't. So now we know a little bit about who you are. Because if I believe the country is broke and that we're going to get taken by China and we're all these horrible things you hear, right? If that's really what I believe, it's going to be hard for me to say, oh yeah, but we should come up with $15 trillion to give Black people, ADOS in particular, reparations. Forget the diaspora. We're going to go for ADOS only, right? I get it. But that right there, without understanding how money works, $15 trillion to a group of people, that's a lot of money. And I'm probably going to be like, oh, hell no. Hell no, I'm not going for that. But I'm not like that. I'm very much for it.
Yeah,
but
we about to cut you off.
What's that?
We were about to cut you off. I'm just playing. Go ahead.
No, I mean, but I'm keeping it real, right? I'm trying to show that this is every one of the projects that we're working on too. All of the things that you think we should have, these great ideas. The left, if they don't get what they want in 5 minutes, they've already quit and they've already gone and done something else, right? They're moving on. I'm good. I ain't got it like that. I'm one of these 24/7 lifers that it just, now that I know, I can't stop talking about it. I gotta get it to the finish line. Too many people are dying for austerity. Too many people are dying that you'll never read about. I mean, I guess it was today or yesterday, one or the other. The New York Times put an article out basically saying that 50% of the police killings of Black people were underreported. 50% were underreported. Okay. Now imagine how many people have died because government policy didn't provide for insulin or didn't provide for a number of things, right? That list of deaths starts stacking way the hell up, doesn't it? You start adding all the ways people are dying in the United States.
The homelessness, the people just dying at night, going to sleep and never waking up, who are homeless. That if they had a roof over their head, they would be alive.
Damn right. They have a video from probably about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, where there was some homeless folks that were staying in a loading dock in Alabama, right in the middle of one of the deep freezes that came through. And they showed this one guy dying, literally, as they showed him dying as he's going down. Another homeless person grabs him, rifles through his jacket, trying to get whatever he can get out of there, and then lays him down dead. And you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, and there's this guy just like counting the money afterwards or whatever. And he wouldn't do anything wrong. I mean, this is the reality of their existence, is that they're going to die. I mean, they got nothing to look for. They're not wondering, well, Chauncey, can I get a new degree? They're thinking, can I eat? Am I going to make it through this night? Am I even making it through this night? Right. So I think that, until we can make people realize that poverty is a political choice, until we can make people realize that this system is set up in such a way that debt trap sucks down everyone, until we can get to a point where we stop thinking about managers at businesses as them and start thinking about the 99% being anybody that wakes up for a job, Okay. We would grow our movement so huge if we could take not only the intersectionality of race and intersectionality of things like reparations, but also take the straightforward, just, we're all workers. We all have a need for homes. We all have a need for a roof over our head, food, you name it. If we started building based on some of those practical things that everyone needs and start showing how the financial choices that are made are not made out of some real legitimate, we're broke. They're made out of an intent to harm. They're made out of an intent to inflict pain, to discipline society, to not ask for too much, and to always be willing to take crumbs. And so until we start treating that as violence and start
It is
seeing
violence. Yes.
austerity as murder, we can't have reparations. We can't have Medicare for all. We can't have student debt relief. We can't have those things, the combined things. We can't have any of them. A Green New Deal, which is needed to survive climate change. Okay. I mean, we're watching it happen right now. You watch the fires going off in the Pacific Northwest, flooding in the South, tornadoes, hurricanes, you name it. You watch all these things coming through and you think, oh, it should be a no-brainer. Of course we have enough money for a Green New Deal. But no, we can't even get through that. I mean, I literally just talked to John Yarmouth, who is the chairman of the budget committee there in Congress for the Democrats. And he was like, Steve, he goes, unfortunately, if you have to explain something to people, you've already lost.
What?
Because the
How
minute
does
you
that
have
work?
it's almost as if anytime you have to explain anything to people, the attention spans are so short, the understanding so minimal. And the fact is that people start calculating votes. If I have to explain, how many of those people are actually going to listen to the explanation? How many of them will agree with me at the end? And then they say, no, forget it. And so this is what we're up against. If we don't teach money, if we don't teach that we can afford to do nice things, none of the things that any of us on the left want to do will ever happen. The right makes too much sense. It's too expensive. What do you mean? We can't afford it. Sounds perfectly logical, doesn't it? I mean, it does. We just don't
because
have
if
the
you think
money.
of it
What are you
like a
talking about?
household budget, of course. Like if
Exactly.
if your kid comes to you and is like, I need $20, you're like, I don't have it, right?
I don't have.
So we
Yeah,
just think of it
exactly.
like that, where it's just like, no, like you could literally, it's like you could go in the garage and print the 20, like.
Exactly. Yes. So I to me, in my way of thinking, the answer to all big policy questions is number one, to not think small, but to dream a huge dream, to dream a dream that makes people go, wow, that sounded pretty interesting. To have enough energy and passion behind that dream to start getting others to share in it and talk about it. I think the other big thing is when they're inevitably going to get to, how are you going to pay for it? And MMT shows us how we can pay for it, shows us how we can afford some big ticket, $15 trillion, ADOS payment. I mean, my God, I think to myself, I can understand why people are resentful and jealous of that. Number one, we've been taught that you're taking somebody else's hard-earned tax dollar. So if they really believe that, if you really believe it's hard-earned tax dollars, you're going to dig in hard and you're going to fight to protect what you think is yours. These people don't have shit either, but they have more than the person below them. And so the fight ends up being crabs in a barrel at the low end. Same exact story with immigration. If you had a federal job guarantee, who cares if you've got people from Mexico or, Afghanistan or Canada,
because you have to employ everybody.
Yeah, big deal. You know what I mean? Now we've got an opportunity to do exactly that. And so
it takes out the competition. The big issue that, at least for Black folks, the big issue that a lot of Black folks have with immigration is the job competition. And it's not just Black folks too, because I read an article where Latinos were talking about it too, Latino Americans. So it's just the competition for work. So if you had to employ everybody, then it wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, and I often too often on the left, we don't have these conversations, right? We don't have these conversations because You have, you know, the minute you say something about jobs and immigrants, the first thing you hear is, oh, they're coming to take our jobs. That's what the right wing thinks. No, asshole. At the lower levels, for a quote unquote
And at
unskilled,
higher levels too.
yeah,
So
now, yeah, yeah, absolutely now. So, and the people who are, let's say, at the lower levels of the social strata, right, when they're placed into competition with external labor, who is going to come in cheaper, less problem, less going to demand less, and may or may not have more skills. But as long as companies can save money, they don't really, at the end of the day, they don't really give a shit, right? Especially when they're shitting on us. So the logic is jobs are limited. There's no question about that. Otherwise there would be no unemployment. So if jobs are limited and you're adding new people to that pool, there's going to be competition for jobs. There's
That's
no
right.
way to get around it. But the left always gets into this I don't know, this virtue signaling thing about we got to
yes.
accept the whole world in.
Well,
Well,
so
but
let me back this up for a minute. Let me
Skilled, low-wage labor are going to be Americans in that same category.
take issue with what you just said.
Mhm.
So one of the things that is of concern is that when you create a federal job guarantee, you create an entry level position that is at a living wage with living benefits, you name it. Now, what
and in
happens?
American work conditions, you can't exploit or abuse people anymore either, because that's the
Mhm.
part that everybody misses. The
That's
people who
right.
come in who are undocumented, they are underpaid, and a lot of times they are exploited. Yeah.
They're
And
Don't
trafficked
if you
speak the
in.
knock that,
language and they
if
get
you knock
used and
that out,
abused.
yep, if you knock
Absolutely.
that out, then you gotta pay everybody a basic wage. So sorry, go ahead. But that's
No,
that's
no,
the point there. It
this is
knocks
you're
out
on it.
so many of the issues.
Once you eliminate the scarcity of employment, once you make it so that jobs are a right in the United States and they come with living standards that are way better than what we're used to today. Okay. Once you change that, all right, now people that previously didn't have money, and people that previously didn't have buying power have buying power. Now, what happens when you have one person's spending becoming another person's income? Now you're creating a situation where more businesses are going to come into play because this
Yeah,
is
you're
a
creating
basic
demand. Yeah.
supply and demand here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So by having those job guarantees, look at today, right now, this should be funny. You look at how they're complaining they can't fill these low wage jobs. They're complaining, they're whining about it, right? But why is that? Well, people know that they don't have to take a trash job. People are refusing to work for crumbs right now. Hats
Mm-hmm.
off to them. But what if you had that job guarantee already in place? Now, all of a sudden, when you're talking about that wage, the 50 people now suddenly have money coming in. 50 people that didn't have money yesterday have money today. 50 people can go out to dinner. 50 people can go
Think
pay
about
their
Detroit
electric.
and Chicago.
Bam.
Just from the massive amount of Black unemployment, not Black unemployment in general, overnight, boom,
Instant.
in 3
Instant.
months. In 3 months, those communities change because everybody has a job and everybody's making money.
That's right.
Homelessness
Everything
gone
changes.
too. Yep. Homelessness is gone as well. Yep.
Just remember your zip code, right, pays your schools. And what happens when you try to raise taxes on Joey Big Bucks over here? Joey Big Bucks over there says, "Oh, you ain't raising my taxes." And Texas says, "Hey, we're always looking for rich people to come on down here. We'll drop the bottom out of the taxes. Come on down here to Texas," right? So they bring their business to Texas. They bring the rich person to Texas. And what happens to that zip code up north where we had schools that were dependent on their tax dollars? Now, all of a sudden, those schools start going belly up. And that's when you start seeing the race to the bottom. And that is one of the big things that impacts the Black community, I think, more than anything, is that race to the bottom. And you've seen this across the country where deserts are left behind as companies pick up and leave and go to Texas or go to Kansas, where they have created a sweetheart deal on the tax structure that allows those businesses to leave and leave people behind destitute. The job guarantee will fix that. And it will also, by fixing that, it will take away that fear of immigrants because now the jobs are, you have a living wage job, period. Doesn't matter what. It doesn't matter what. All those nonprofit jobs that people worked as volunteers can be compensated. If you want to teach surfing lessons, if you want to let me just say this. It's just separate but very important. When I was a kid, all of us could play football. They give us our pads, they give us our helmet, they give us our jersey. We wanted to play in the band. They say, you want to play clarinet? You want to play flute? Here you go. Here's a flute. Yeah, you got to pay $10 a month or something like that for rental. But if you were broke, they gave it to you for free. You didn't have to worry about being excluded from everything. Now, gym is like every sixth Monday of the month or something, like weird stuff. I mean, sixth Monday of the month.
We got it.
They cut all these basic things we took for granted.
Band was another
the race
one.
to the bottom continues, right? And so
Band,
much
all
of
the arts got taken out. Yep.
So much of what MG was saying about immigrants and stuff like that, it's important to understand that is on purpose. They want you hating them. This is intentional, because the more you hate this goes back to Bacon's Rebellion. Let's go way back in the Wayback Machine. Okay,
we can talk about that
and
one.
Whites fighting together on the same side, whether it be good or bad stuff going on, it didn't matter. Point is that you had the lower classes uniting together. And so what did they do? The easiest way to break up class unity is to give the poor white dude an extra piece of bread for the month, and he'll sell out his black
they made him white
in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and they made you guys white, because before then you guys were Irish, you were German, you were
That's right.
You were Catholics, then they were like, no, you are now white, and being white, you can no longer associate with those people that we call Negro.
That's right.
And slave.
It's so funny, because if you also think about this too, at that point in time, they realized, hey, we need to start going after them true African folk that don't speak English, that aren't literate. We need to make sure they're the ones we bring into the States, not the trained because what happens, we already know, when you're educated, you're not going to accept anything. You're not just going to accept whatever. And the people would get ideas, and that's how they got together. That's how Bacon's Rebellion happened. But what happens if you don't speak the language, and all you know is pain and suffering, and all you know is that person's white and the white person's one that whipped me? You're probably not going to sit there and unite. That's probably not going to happen now. And you look at Reconstruction, even this whole thing, this has been going on nonstop.
Yep.
So to me, the idea of a federal job guarantee should take away, I hope would take away the fear of immigrants who are coming to this country because of shit that our nation did to destabilize the world. We've created more war refugees and climate refugees, you name it. And it's kind of our responsibility to fix that too at some level. And so if they come to this country, if we didn't have a job guarantee, if we didn't have the ability to spend, if knowledge of MMT didn't fundamentally change everything you know about economics, then I would be right there standing at the gate saying, don't let them in this country. We got to take care of our own. We haven't taken care of our own veterans. We haven't taken care of our own kids. I'd be right on that bandwagon. And I used to be, because I used to be a conservative many, many moons ago. But now that I know what I'm fighting for, now that I know the power of a job guarantee, and I understand the power of propaganda, and I understand what they've done to us to make us hate each other, right? At that point in time, that job guarantee is fundamentally a game changer. It literally just took away so many of the things that had me, fearing immigration and in trying to prevent that false scarcity narrative from kicking in hard. So something to think
I love
about.
your pairing. I love your pairing of the federal job guarantee with the immigration issue, because it definitely for me, I'm like, yeah, if there was a federal jobs guarantee, yeah. Like we get a lot of racism from people of color and immigrants, so we're still gonna have to have some conversations about how they fucking treat us. But the economic issue, which is the main issue, well, one of the main issues, that would definitely, it definitely changes my thought in my mind. Yeah, like, if you got to give everybody a job.
I want to touch on Bacon's Rebellion. Well, this division of black and white in the nation, and this is what frustrates me about the left, right? The thing that has happened over and over again, whether it be Bacon's Rebellion, whether it be early unionization in the country, whether it be Reconstruction, like you mentioned, It's always the same thing. Black folks, white folks work together. Everything's cool. White folks come along and tell other white folks, hey, we're going to give you more to shit on them. Right? So you leave them alone, come with us. Everybody's happy. Right? This happens over and over and over again. And here we are again in 2019, 2020, 2020, 2021. And the left does the same fucking thing again. Here it is, your opportunity to embrace reparations, to repair all that shit that you that your grandparents, whoever, even if you weren't here if your family wasn't here for slavery, your family was likely here for Jim Crow or redlining or something like that, and took part in it. Very few people were freedom fighters, white or black. So here's the opportunity to repair that rift. Reparations is that opportunity to repair that rift, and really for us to come together. And they embraced everything but. Literally everything but. They're literally embracing Nazis now instead of embracing us. That how
believe me, I wish that it was only on this issue, right? I really do, because this would be an easy one to solve if that was the case. One of the I really believe that from the bottom of my heart that so much of the issue here is a lack of understanding of money. And that is why I keep putting MMT at the top. I want to tell you something else too. And this may be a little bit of a hot take, but it was formulating in my head while I was thinking about this, and that is that, when you think about, ADOS and the diaspora, I know that Sandy Darity has made a compelling case that ADOS should be the primary first, they've got an explicit grievance that they seek resolution to. And in that framework, it's very specific. However, as a white ally, somebody who at least is an ally in the economic space, okay, I think to myself, as I'm talking to folks that are not from the ADOS perspective, they're more on the diaspora perspective, right? Who am I supposed to get in trouble with? Who do I get in trouble with? Because I'm going to get in trouble with somebody.
We're 90% of the black people in this country.
That's
your
what
answer.
it is. Basically, that's
your
what it
answer.
is. So there's roughly 43 million black people. Adolf is 36 million of them. But what we will give you some more information just to make it a little easier. So so there's a thing called CARICOM. So the Caribbean people have their own reparations, things that are being worked out with their countries. So a lot of these groups have their own reparations claims that are being done. So them being kind of jumped on. And for me, what I like to say is, okay, well, most Africans got to this country in the 90s. The Caribbeans got here in the 80s. So my next door neighbors in Los Angeles are Mexican. They got here in the 70s. Why wouldn't they get reparations? They're brown, they've experienced discrimination. So my whole thing is what makes them different than my Latino neighbors. That's why I think we should do something overall for poverty, but I don't think they should be included in our reparations plan, because you're just bringing in people who don't fit. Because like I said, everybody's like, that's how everybody's poor. If we're gonna, that's how you turn around and be like, well, why don't we just do reparations for everybody? And that's how everybody gets pigeonholed in. So it's not so much of like being against the diaspora thing. It's just like, it's, if your house burns down and you have State Farm, you don't sue my insurance company of Mercury to get your check.
Yep.
Like, it's really basic.
I 100% agree with this, by the way. My concern is that
put it out there.
If you go through reparations, right? I'm just trying to give you some perspective as to where the left gets screwed up. Because there isn't one position to take. And when you do take it and you haven't been invested in the backdrop of the storyline and the back and forth between the different groups that are happening outside of your comfort zone, outside of your normal area of information gathering, right? I mean, Black Twitter is real, right? I mean, there's a
Yes.
lot of things out there that if you're not paying attention, it'll happen right in front of your face and you won't even know what hit you.
Mhm.
And so for me, I've invested an incredible amount of myself to not only try to learn the history, the real history, going into countries before it even comes to the US, like looking at how things came to be. For me, it's been a tremendous journey. It's been a huge journey of just trying to learn to be effective, to not just have a take for no reason out of, let me just pull this out of the air. It's my take here. Beautiful, right? I want to have a take that has facts to it that, and that's why I've tied myself so closely to Sandy Darity and Kirsten Mullen's work. In From Here to Equality is one of the best books I've ever read, and I had the
It is
opportunity to get it
amazing.
before it was released.
Ooh,
But I've
lucky.
also listened to, like, Michelle Alexander, and she's got a very powerful take that's works very closely with Sandy's work. You can lay them on top of each other, and a lot of very important similarities and things come out of that understanding. But you look back, and I'll give you an example. I read CLR James' book, The Black Jacobins, on the Haitian
Oh, I haven't read
Revolution.
that.
Well, lo and behold, there's a guy named Gerald Horne that
Mm-hmm.
destroys CLR James.
Oh, I
Okay,
love Gerald
talks
Thorne.
about how the Black Jacobins is basically a bourgeois revolution. It's not the real one. The real one is the one led by Dessalines, who was a brutal, and then you go back. Talking to Pascal Robert, you go way back to the 1750s, and you're talking about Mackendal, a real badass who, like, apparently poisoned 6,000 plantationers. This is, a lot of really cool information there. But if you didn't know that, and you came out, that you might be going, Toussaint Louverture is a great, wonderful guy, right? Only to find out that he's busy selling off the Bourgeois to whoever will take him. And as he's trying to make nice with the French, and only to have Dessalines dime on him and put him in jail forever. I mean, it's kind of funny, the whole story. But if you don't know that, and I didn't know that, right? I stuck my foot in Haiti because I thought this is a cool story about revolution. Read CLR James, learned about all the abuse, freaked out, only to find out that that's the light version. The real version is Gerald Horne, and that's where Pascal jumped in. So my point is, don't hate people because they don't know. There's a journey. It's
I
the
think
lack
that's
of
a good point.
curiosity.
Thank you for that, Steve. No, I think thank you for that, because for sorry, I'm gonna jump in. Then you go, NG, because all of us got here through scholarships, right? Like, we didn't just wake up and be like, oh, reparations, or oh, MMT, or oh, like, it literally took years of learning. So for me, I don't hate people for being ignorant. I just hate people on Twitter for acting like they've been researching this for the past 10 years and they've never opened a book. I know you go through it, because it's even worse. You got degrees. So, so it's like, excuse me, person on Twitter who hasn't taken a math class in 20 years and just has no idea what I'm talking about, but you're telling me no more than me. So yeah, it's not a hate. It's I guess we all have to be patient. It's a frustration, but we all have to be patient with each other. Go ahead, NG.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the left, again, they haven't invested the time, like you were saying, Steve and Sam. They haven't invested the time to really learn this history, right? And and we also, as Black people, played a role in it. Black is Black. We're all Black, and Pan-Africanism, which at the end of the day turned out to be a scam played on us, us as Black Americans, US Freedmen or ADOS, right? So what frustrates us about non-freedmen here in the United States, or non-ADOS here in the people in the United States, is Black people in the United States. The thing that frustrates us is that they kind of push themselves into the discussion, right? And that's sort of rooted in them being brought in and lifted above us, right? That happens, and it's not just them, right? Everybody that comes to every group that comes to this country gets lifted above us, right? It's the Native Americans, us, and everybody else above us, right? So A lot of times they come in, and the whole myth about everybody, all the black people that come here are poor refugees, which is not the truth, right? Which is not most of the people that come from Africa, they have an or the Caribbean, they have an education, they have some money, they can reach back for money, they'll have political connections, some of them have CIA and Department of Defense connections that they're coming here to like just like what happened with the Afghans right now, right? There's a lot of that goes on too. So all these people come in here and nobody really has any loyalty to us, right? Because we're on the bottom. Like as I think Yvette said it, nobody comes into a country and joins a losing team, right? So when you hear people say, when you hear non-freedmen say that reparations is bullshit, or why did they deserve anything special? I mean, the bottom line is, you understand history, Steve. I get that, but when people, I don't ping people for not knowing. I ping people for being assholes when you don't know.
Yeah.
that's
Dude, the
yeah.
full cup syndrome. You know it all, right?
Yeah, know it all, and that's when I ping people, and then when you show them how harmful they're being, and they still don't shift. Yeah, I'm done with you. You know what I mean? And that was one of the areas when I split with the left. I had my moment writing and being some sort of a luminary on the left, and one of the go-to black people on the on the left. But one of the areas, the first area was immigration, right? Because it's like, okay, immigration impacts us as people on the bottom. It impacts us differently than people in the middle and on the top. Right. So we need to have these discussions, but they wanted silence on that. Right. And then here comes reparations. Like, okay, hey, this is a perfect situation to repair what happened in Baker's Rebellion, like we talked about before. Still nothing. Like, wait a minute. Do these people really want change, or they just want Medicare for all and free college? Like Sam was saying, it's just, there's these middle class, it's like these middle class fantasies of these are the things that bothering me and my friends. This college debt is bothering me and my friends. Therefore, it should be important to everyone else. All right. And it's frustrating because it's something that's simple to us now because we've done the research, but it's really frustrating when you're on the left and people are just shitting on your thing that you feel is important, whatever it is. And it's good for the entire country, which reparations is good for the entire country, right? And they still shit on it, but they'll grasp onto everything else, anything else, and it's so frustrating. I just wanted to share that with y'all.
No, and again, I'll sound like a broken record because I think this requires a broken record, but I really do believe this screams out why MMT has got to be the leading thing here because of. In order to get past, I would say, and I'm no statistician, so forgive me when I screw this up, but I would say most people, okay, recognize we should be providing descendants of slaves reparations. I believe most people, even Republicans, whether they say it out loud or not, I believe they even realize that we probably need to do something.
They call it earned
what or how.
They call it earned inheritance. That's what the GOP is, because that's what they're focus testing right now. Is the phrasing is earned inheritance, which isn't bad. That's not bad. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Ultimately, I think that we need to figure out a way, if you will, to demystify the financial component of this. And that's not just for white people. In fact, that might be more so for Black people in the ADOS community who are actively petitioning for reparations, who are the leading tip of the spear, so to speak. It's important, I think, for them to really focus on the barriers, right? To overcoming the objections that are there. I know that this is where I start whenever I talk to people, and to the degree that I understand the space, okay, I probably have done more reading than the average person has. So I probably have a little bit more of a little bit more insight. So I'm not necessarily a fair target in that sense. But the average person that hasn't done that reading, you got to understand that they really truly believe that their hard-earned tax dollars are paying for everything from golf trips to anything
Strippers and
that they
cocaine.
say they think it's so.
Yeah.
In order to get to $15 trillion, that's a lot of money, right? And you see them crying over 3.5 for an infrastructure bill, right? Imagine presenting a $15 trillion bill to just give money to people they already don't like. They don't like, right? I mean, let's be fair. We've seen racism in this country. This is not some new thing here. We have racial issues that have been baked on top of racial issues, on top of new racial issues. And every time you think you solve the one, they change the wording and it becomes the same thing again differently. Right. I mean, it just never stops. So you've got to overcome that money question to get to the other things, right? Because remember what I was saying, once you understand we can afford it and you're still against it, now we're talking about something different. Now we got something.
It's a different conversation.
That's right. That's a different conversation altogether.
And the thing for me is the people that you can reach that are like, okay, we can afford it. Then it's like, yeah, so we can afford reparations, but guess what we can afford for the rest of the country? Like, because like for me, I feel like I have no problem with giving people something. What's in it for me? We're Americans. We love what's in it for me. Like shit, there's something in it for you too. Like we need a better country for everybody. And that's how I feel as like an ADOS person, as a US Freedmen. Like I want reparations. I want my family situation to be better, but I want to live in a country that is good for
Stable.
everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
like
right.
It can be. Yep.
Yeah, I got white god sisters. They got babies and families. Like I want to see them be stable and not have to go through anything that their mothers went through in their childhood through poverty. Like I've seen what happens to white people in poverty. All four of my god sisters were on meth for over a decade. And it started when the oldest was 17 and the youngest was 12. She was selling the 12-year-old and the 14-year-old for drugs. So when I tell you I've seen what it does in a lot of communities, like I care. So it's like, we need to get people to, and like you said, understand we can afford it. Because I guess once people understand that we can afford it, maybe there can be some empathy that people will start to have. Because if you understand we can afford it and we're not doing it, then you should feel bad. Whereas before it's like, well, if we can't
redirect your
afford
ire
it,
at that point.
yeah, because if you can't afford it, you're like, oh, well, that's just sad, but what can I do? But when you realize like, no, there's something we could be doing, we're just choosing not to. That's
it.
It's a different energy.
Right.
I'm so glad you came to talk
What
to
you got,
us.
Mud?
I know, Mud, be quiet.
I was just gonna say, I think that's the frustration that I think everyone on the left is having. It's the people that are like hardcore socialists, communists. They're saying, look, we can have government step in on some of these things and provide a better quality of life, but we just have to figure out a way to communicate to people. Like, it's not they think that everything is being run by the economy. It has to be birthed out of the private sector. And the reality is that government gives birth to damn near everything. Like even with the private sector, a lot of that is dependent on government finance, like government contracts. And, even if you look at it from the perspective of tax cuts and all of this plays into it. And like we all have to, like, I wish leftists, as they're willing to be like, we can print the money for Medicare for all and all these things. I wish they would also take on that same perspective with reparations, and then we could really have a coalition. But I think that the reparations piece has been the one piece that has kind of caused the left to lose, because they need to gain Black American support. Like they need us. They need our numbers.
Yeah.
And they keep running from that issue because they're scared that they're going to lose, white voters because of the tax issue. And that's where, like, definitely MMT is the thing that's going to be able to bind us all behind the cause of making this a better country for everybody.
You
agree with
said
that.
it better than I could have right there. Very, very well said.
MG, you can run off, but Steve, can you give us some resources? Like, where can people find you? Where are good places to just start? Where are good places just to start learning more information about MMT? Like, for people who actually want to get to know this stuff.
Right. So I guess the best thing is to pick up Stephanie Kelton's book, The Deficit Myth.
That is good.
It is a really, really easy to understand book that explains about 70% of MMT. I mean, there's a lot left that isn't in that book, but what do you expect for an entry level? She's trying to get people to really get it. So that would be a starting point. You can also come to our website, realprogressives.org. And under, at Modern Monetary Theory Basics, we have a tab. We also have our podcast, which is Macro and Cheese. And I have a lot of episodes with experts. And I try to make it accessible for regular people. I'm not always successful, but I try. So you can find that on our website as well. And you can follow me on Twitter. It's at SD Grumbine, Grumbine. And my tagline is austerity is murder.
Well, thank you so much for coming by. And like I said, we really appreciate you. And
listening to Reset Race, you now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race, you're now tuned in to Reset Race. What? Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them, put them back on the grill again. We grilling them, put them back on the grill again. We grilling them, back on the grill again. We grilling them, You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake. Lineage go back to US Southern plantations. Lineage, Jim Crow and mass incarceration. Redlining lynchings, we are old from this nation. You're not about justice if you ain't for reparations. MG the wise one, cousin mother intellectual. Samantha bringing fire, anti-black, we pressing you. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies. The backbone of the country, the win, you need our energy. Go on, see? Listening to Reset Race. You now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake.
Until you do right by me, everything you think about is gonna crumble.
Negroes should do whatever is necessary to bring about a complete solution to their problem. When I say whatever is necessary, they should have the flexibility to do whatever is necessary to solve the problem.
Real Progressives. Happy Martin Luther King Day. Today is a wonderful day to remember the struggle that the African American community and, quite frankly, the United States went through to try and bring about equality to our nation. Our nation has been divided for many, many, many years, and that division is even more pronounced today. So on this wonderful day, this opportunity to look back and also, more importantly, look forward. This is our opportunity to look forward and find out how we can capitalize on a more just, a more fair, a more equitable society. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce one of my all-time favorite economists, one of the best people in the world at describing the federal job guarantee. I'm going to bring you on with Pavlina Tcherneva. Pavlina, welcome to the show.
Hi, Steve. Good to be on.
So let me ask you, Pavlina, what is it that got you involved in economics? Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Oh, I started, just like most people, I started because I was inspired by a professor. And my professor was Matt Forstater. I don't think you've had him on the show yet, but he has actually written probably the best piece on Martin Luther King and the job guarantee and the March for Jobs and Freedom, and how MLK was a strong advocate for economic social justice, the Economic Bill of Rights. So, I started as an economist because of Matt Forstater, but in my college days, I met Warren Mosler, who you have had on the show. And I was introduced to some of the ideas of soft currency economics, or what we know today as modern money. So I became Warren's first researcher. And then from then, things changed dramatically, as I'm sure it is for many people who first hear about modern money. So I was really determined to just pursue my education. I met Randy Ray along the way. I worked at the Levy Economics Institute. So somehow things merged. There was a happy coincidence of circumstances, and I was always in this environment of Minsky, Keynes, and then we brought in the modern money literature and developed it, and that's how I started.
Well, I can tell you right now, we have had the pleasure and also the difficulty of trying to present modern money, modern monetary theory, which is, oh my God, it's a theory. It's just a theory, guys. It's just a theory. And I'm like, guys, that's just a marketing term somebody came up with. It used to be called Mosler economics. If you talk to Ellis will call it macroeconomic reality or currency analysis. Yeah. Tell us, what is modern monetary theory?
The first thing that Warren and I did in almost more than 20 years ago was a conference in Bretton Woods, and the conference was titled A Framework for Macroeconomic Analysis. Our job was to provide the tools for economists to think about big picture problems, to provide an alternative macroeconomic framework for understanding the world around us. So modern monetary theory is a bit of a misnomer because it's not a theory. We are first and foremost interested with appropriately describing the economy, the monetary system, the currency, and then how markets work, labor markets work, etc. And from there, when we provide these unique new insights, then we come up with new unique policy proposals. So we began with a macroeconomic analytic framework that's centered around this idea that governments have unique powers and unique responsibilities to meet social and economic challenges because they have monetary sovereignty. In other words, they don't have the kind of limits to spend the way we do, households, firms, etc. And of course, they have a responsibility to provide for the common good.
So let's talk about the common good. We learned with Joe Firestone on Saturday night the term the public purpose, and you used that the first time I interviewed you. And for many people, that's a term that I guess could be as nebulous or vague as anything else. What is the public purpose when you describe the public purpose? When you're talking about that, what do you mean?
Look, to me, it's very simple. An economy has to provide for all, and it has to provide some very basic things, right? We've got this market system that has produced wealth unlike anything else we have seen in the history of the world. But the system doesn't distribute its wealth, its riches in an even way. And it is a failure. It's just not just an economic failure, it's a moral failure for the richest system, economic system in the world to fail to provide for all. So for me, the public purpose is that, to design public policies that are universal, that are guaranteed, that provide a very minimum basic decent standard of living. And that will include some things that are included in the Economic Bill of Rights, but they would include universal education, universal healthcare. The right to a shelter has to be guaranteed, the right to food, decent food, and the right to a decent, well-paying job. So to me, the public purpose is that, we figure out as a society, what is the minimum standard of life we want to guarantee our citizens? And then we start thinking about the policies that will guarantee this. And I don't think that this is the focus of public policy. It's certainly not the focus of macroeconomics. And so we're trying to change this.
I love it. So let's just take a dip in the pool for a minute. So obviously the job guarantee is the cornerstone, if you will, of modern monetary theory. It's like the lone prescription out there that is it is the key to it. It really is. Full employment is the ultimate goal of any MMT prescription. MMT is an analysis of the way money works in any place. It can describe it anywhere. But in particular, in the US, we talk about 1971 to present as kind of our model for which we gauge this stuff from. Can you explain to our crowd, who has been far more I don't know, that's not the right word, far more exposed to the universal basic income, can you explain to them what the job guarantee is, and then begin to explain why you don't favor a standalone UBI, why you favor a job guarantee or a job guarantee and a UBI combination, which quite frankly, the Minsky group, the Minskys put out a phenomenal paper. I think it was Brad Voracek wrote it. That could be wrong. Maybe it's another one, but it basically said that, UBI and job guarantee are complementary programs, not adversarial ones. Anyway, I sort of set the stage too much there for you, but if you wouldn't mind, tell us about what the job guarantee is and is not.
Okay. All right. So the job guarantee is really a policy. You can think of it as a public policy that completes the safety net. It is a policy that guarantees, number one, a basic human right. Number two, the job guarantee is a missing piece of the safety net, in the sense that as we have conceptualized the welfare state, we have figured out ways to guarantee some basic necessities, right? When people are missing retirement income, we guarantee retirement income through Social Security. When people are missing shelter, we guarantee some shelter. If people are missing education, we guarantee public education. If we're missing a job, we are not guaranteeing a job. So we are providing training, education, various other things, but we're not guaranteeing what people desire, right? What people need. So it's a employment insurance is one way to think about it. Okay, instead of unemployment insurance, we guarantee a decent paying job for all. But more importantly, the job guarantee is linked to the modern money literature because it has some very unique macroeconomic features. So just for the audience that might not be, for the listeners that might not be too familiar with the modern money currency aspects. Basically, we argue that in this world we have paper currency, right? We have a fiat, we call it a fiat monetary system. Basically, governments are monopoly issuers of a green piece of paper that they issue and spend. But we don't really know what the value of this green pieces of paper is, right? Of these green pieces of paper. We know that governments spend on various things, but we don't quite know what is the value of that currency. And so the job guarantee has this very unique aspect that it links, it connects the expenditure of the currency into the economy to 1 hour of publicly useful labor, right? And so it's an anchor. It is an anchor for the value of the currency. It is always anchored in labor hours. We always know what we are getting for the money that is being emitted into the economy. The other unique feature of the job guarantee is that it is counter-cyclical. And by that, what we mean is that it moves with the drumbeat of the economy. So when the economy enters in a slump, firms start laying off workers. Those workers, of course, are concerned about whether they will be reemployed. They get on unemployment insurance. The families are disrupted. Their spending patterns change, right? So they don't go to the movies. They don't go to the restaurant. Then every unemployed person, in a way, throws another person out of work, right? So you have this kind of contagion effect. Unemployment starts accelerating because, of initial sort of boost in unemployment. And what governments do is they attempt to stop this process by, adding stimulus, spending, food stamps, various other expenditures. When the economy recovers, and as we've seen this in this past, expansion, I mean, that was a very slow and long, expansion, we've created very few jobs. So when the economy expands, jobs are created in the private sector, then government sort of pulls back, retreats, doesn't spend so much on unemployment insurance, on food stamps, etc. So instead of doing it this way, instead of stabilizing the economy in this way, the way we currently do it, we're saying that the job guarantee is the perfect way to stabilize the economy. When Lowe's or when Home Depot lays off 5,000 people, they may or may not get on unemployment insurance, but maybe a bunch of them want to get into a project, a public sector construction project, and then they replace the loss of one job with another job. And that completely transforms the livelihood of a person, right? When you know that on the other end, there is a guaranteed employment opportunity with decent income. And so the job guarantee basically provides that safety net. People who have been laid off by private firms go into the government government funded, but could be locally administered job guarantee. That expands the pool of the job guarantee of workers expands. That provides the stimulus to the economy. And when the private sector has recovered sufficiently and they are looking for new workers or looking to rehire them back, then the job guarantee shrinks and government spending on the program shrinks. And it is the perfect counter-cyclical stabilizer because always know what you're getting for the money. Right? You always know what government is spending is you're getting a job. You're getting something useful that is being produced in the community and the public purpose.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take a moment to talk about this. And Ellis had touched on this a little bit. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of walked through this in terms of, hey, my name's Steve Grumbine. I'm a surfer. My name's Steve Grumbine. I'm a guitar player. My name's Steve Grumbine. I'm an activist. Whatever. My name's Steve Grumbine. I'm a stay-at-home dad. There are ways of redefining what work is. This is not the same thing as a, hey, you're going to work for the man. This isn't just funding capitalism. This is a means of taking away the capitalist's ability to punish the workers, basically. This is preventing them from having the ability to basically use starvation and the basic necessities of life against them. Is it not? Or
look, absolutely. Unemployment is used as a threat. Like we want to remove joblessness as a threat to people, right? You don't want the private sector to so-called discipline workers because they can threaten them with they can use the threat of unemployment. And in fact, because we tolerate a lot of unemployment, we tolerate, what is it now? It is about 7 million people officially unemployed, but really it's closer to 17 people who are looking for full-time work. So they are ready to compete for your job. So that threat of unemployment is removed because you know that you have another alternative. You have another living wage job standing on the ready. And so the employer can't quite, threaten you with unemployment, certainly not at the low end, where, people are getting sort of the lowest wages, the poverty wages that the private sector works. So pays. So if you're working in a poverty wage private sector work and you've got a living wage public sector work, guess what? The private sector will have to do something to keep that worker. They have to pay more, better. So,
Right.
So it really establishes the labor standard, what we believe is the minimum decent job, that is decent labor conditions, decent wages, decent benefits, and whether that's vacation package, with retirement package, whether it is paid leave, etc. It is the labor standard. Now, you mentioned the basic income guarantee, and I'm happy to talk more about the comparisons. I've been a friend of the basic income guarantee since 2000 when I first started talking to the academics. And only recently in the popular press, basic income has become so popular. But, we've got the same goals. We've got the same objectives. We want to get rid of the precarious nature of the labor market, right? We want to make sure that people don't live in poverty. So we have same objectives, but we have different views of how we get there. And there are many different versions of the basic income guarantee, so I want to be careful which one I'm talking about. I am fully on board with the universal child allowance. We should do it today. We should have done it yesterday. Paid family leave. Various other income supports expand, strengthen Social Security. Disability benefits, etc. But there is this one proposal that is universal, right? Unconditional, provided to all at living level. In other words, $20,000 grant and to anyone, rich or poor, irrespective of whether they work or not. Let's call it $10,000 grant, right? My philosophical, there are a number of problems that I have, but one is a philosophical objection here, that the basic income is motivated by the right sort of arguments, but it only provides access to the system as is structured, right? You get an income, you get a check, and then you have to go and buy the childcare, the education, the healthcare, all these other things that you need. So it is not in and of itself, a check is not transformative of the system that creates the inequities that we want to correct, right? We want to transform, to make the system, the economic system, more just. We want to provide decent wages. We want to provide healthcare. We want to provide childcare, environmental care. The basic income in and of itself is not an institution. It's a payment. And so there is this idea that, we're going to get our checks and we will be able finally to participate in the labor market and get affordable care. Well, I can tell you, I get an income and I have difficulty getting affordable childcare. So childcare is already missing for people who have incomes. What suggests that childcare will be there, affordable childcare will be there if we provide the basic income grant? The problem is the economy. The economy doesn't provide the things we need. It's not just the simple absence of income. So what the job guarantee does, it kind of matches the problem with the solution. Right? We say, okay, these communities don't have enough childcare. We will provide it through the job guarantee, and we will allow people to participate in the provisioning. So you can think of it as participation income. It allows, and it kind of empowers people to participate in their community in a very structured way, right? You lack adequate, decent food. Here's a community garden. We will organize it. We've seen it. come and participate in the production of an organic farm, etc. You lack after-school activities for your kid in your particular community. Here's the local library is going to organize them. Not to mention the enormous other things that, problems that we are facing of, environmental problems.
Can I interrupt just for a moment?
Absolutely.
This is so beautiful to me. So what I want to make sure of for and I'm going to take you out of the picture just for a minute, and this is me, not you saying this. What I want you guys to understand is this. We're talking about serving America. We're talking about serving our local communities. We're talking about serving one another and making our lives better. We're not talking about serving the man, so to speak, okay? This is not a replacement for capitalism and trying to augment this is something totally different. This is about our lives. This is about improving our lot in life. So I want to make sure we understand this is not Calvinism. This is not one of these things that you get wrapped up in, okay? This right here is a new way of viewing participation in our society. Anyway, with that, I want to bring Pavlina back on. I'm sorry about that. Thank you.
No, it's a really good point. We just have to start thinking in broader terms about what work is. Work is not going, just to the office and getting a job. And for many people, that's a good thing. And many people want that. So I see no reason why I should tell people what they should want. I find this a little bit in the basic income crowd, that they say, look, the basic income is liberating. You don't have to go to your miserable job. Well, a lot of people are craving jobs, and it's not my business to tell them whether they should or not work. My job is to actually create the opportunities that they desire. So how about we create decent work? So, it's not our job to put people into miserable jobs in the private form. What work is to put a decent labor standard, and through a program that is not tied to private profit, but is tied to the public good. So we really expand the definition of what's useful work. We provide these other opportunities that the private sector is just not in the business of providing jobs for all. It's a very basic fact of life. And that is the function of the public sector, to guarantee that basic human right in a humane way. So we can again think of very very interesting models of providing work in the community, to enhance participation, involvement, to transform the communities and even the production process itself. Perhaps food doesn't have to be provided for profit, sustainable agriculture, right? Not necessarily strictly for profit. So that kind of job guarantee allows the possibilities for people to participate in their communities and transform their lives.
So I want to just say this. I have come to believe that, I started off thinking, wow, we can go ahead and provide people with the basic income. And you basically helped me understand, well, many people have, but just now, I think you said it very succinctly. Bottom line is that you can give us money, but childcare is still unaffordable. You can give us money, but these different aspects of life are still unaffordable. And I've read, I'm giving the Minskys a lot of credit here. I want to make sure they hear this. They wrote a great article the other day. Somebody was commenting about not so much a basic income guarantee, so much as a basic needs guarantee. And the way they wrote it out there was so powerful, and it addressed exactly what you're saying. Instead of just a basic income, I'm going to provide you these things that the capitalists of the world can raise the rates up to match your big and screw you up to begin with. And, and actually provide you with the necessities so that life is not an unnecessary struggle, so you can self-actualize. I mean, to me, I just fell in love with it. That just sent me into a wonderful place.
Yeah. I think I had tweeted something saying, the basic income guarantee makes perfect sense if the grant is not cash, but in terms of real goods and services. And, what are you going to do with the enormous cost of healthcare if you get $10,000 a year guaranteed, no questions asked? You can't do anything with the basic income grant. And the thing is, this is the problem, that there's support on the right and the left for this program. But the very strong support on the right is to replace a lot of the welfare programs, to replace the welfare, the safety net essentially with the basic income grant. And I have to say that some people on the left have conceded, yeah, the basic income could be more efficient. And I completely disagree. Like the way you solve a problem is you solve it directly. Your problem is expensive healthcare, you provide affordable healthcare. You don't provide cash, you provide affordable healthcare. If that means controlling drug prices, if that means busting the monopolies, if that means providing a public option, that's what you do. If the problem is inadequate health childcare, you provide it. You don't provide a grant so that people can buy it on the market. You directly provide what is necessary.
It's like school vouchers.
Yes,
the
exactly.
Same exact problem. And that's what, I'm sorry, that's what kills me is the very people that would fight against school vouchers are many of the same people fighting for a basic income guarantee and don't realize that once again, the wealthy will still go to the best schools ever. They'll have but they'll have a check in their hand to help offset that, while the poor will still be segregated in these bad schools because they can't afford to get there. I mean, anyway.
Yeah, no, can I just say something more about the safety net? Really, it's with these public policies, you create policy space and constituencies. Basically, you create support for these programs. If I give you a basic income grant, I can always tell you, hey, why do you need why do you need these food stamps if you have the basic income grant? You're done. I can't take away funding for public education if the job guarantee provides after-school activities or teacher assistance in the school. But if I give you a basic income grant, somebody can tell you, look, you don't need the public school system, go and buy it in the market. So if the job guarantee is providing, providing childcare, you can take away Head Start program funds. Do you see? If you marry the job guarantee, the jobs are in these public spaces and tied to other public policies. If some of the job guarantee people are doing some basic work for the EPA, you just can't defund the EPA, right? The Environmental Protection Agency. Or if there are some very basic food inspector functions that the job guarantee could fulfill, you don't defund the Food and Drug Administration. So what I'm saying is that it is really an institution that can supplement all of these other areas of government that have been sorely defunded. And you just can't take them away. And they have been fought for, with blood and tears, if you will. So you don't want to replace the hard-fought welfare state with just a single grant.
So let me talk to you about something slightly off kilter, just so people can see the logic behind this. You can almost take the exact logic you're using and extrapolate it across many other areas. Like one of the most difficult areas that we've talked about and was brought up during the campaign where Bernie Sanders was running was the idea of reparations. And many people were like, oh God, no. And I'll tell you, the pushback was, how do you define what that is? How do you define what that makes people whole, right? And in this particular case, you look around at all these different subject areas where people say, just throw money at it. The reality is they want the services. They need the services that come with it. So how do you make someone whole who has been in generational poverty, who has never had proper nutrition, who has never been able to go to the dentist? We never hear about universal dental care. You never hear about universal eye care. You only hear about universal medical care, but I would like to believe that's a more holistic view. But when you think about these things, providing these purposes, providing these needs, a lot of people come back and go, that's socialism. That's communism. So my thought is, so what, man? I don't care. We'll call it what you want. I call it thank you, thank you, thank you. How do you, I know that economics is largely apolitical, but you are one of the people that has a real bend for humanity, and it's one of the reasons why I like what you write and like what you say so much. Can you help us understand when you hear these sorts of things? You probably don't hear it at the top because people that are they probably just don't say that. But knowing full well that the average voter is trapped in a Fox News, CNN paradigm, how do you explain, hey, why don't we take care of each other? I mean, what's a good way to overcome that in your mind?
Well, look, there is no argument anyone can make that can justify somebody going without food. Like, it doesn't matter how good or bad you are, how how well you did in school, or whether you managed to pull yourself by your bootstraps. There is a fundamental sort of human responsibility to make sure that people do not die in this market-based economies, that we guarantee the basic necessities. So basically, you want to provide a floor to anyone. If those people who, for example, are very much, wedded to the idea of economic freedom, that somehow, the government interferes in our lives and, limits our freedoms. We just have to explain that you don't really have freedom when you don't have a job. There's not much that you could do to determine your livelihood or your kid's livelihood if you don't have a job. And then we have to explain that the absence of jobs is not an individual failure. This is the big challenge. To explain that the absence of job opportunities is a simply macroeconomic systemic failure. It is more often than not beyond the individual's control. There are, of course, some individuals who lose their jobs because of their own doing, but the system is not designed to create employment and income for all. And so we just have to provide the floor. To talk about genuine freedoms, you just have to guarantee some very basic necessities to everyone so that they can then, figure out what they want to do with their lives. This is something else that I really want, I've started emphasizing recently. Most people don't realize they are paying for the unemployment, the cost of unemployment. Unemployment has absolutely enormous social and economic costs. Mortality rates go up, health costs go up, suicide rates go up. People lose income, permanent income over their lifetime. Even if they lose their job for a short period of time, there is a permanent loss over their lifetime income. But it's worse. It's not just the problem for the unemployed. Spouses suffer, children suffer. Children's performance in school is worse, their performance in the labor market is worse. Now, as a society, we are already paying the enormous costs of incarceration that is connected to economic crimes, the cost of increased health care. This is already paid for. So we can quite simply do it so much better. We can have a more humane approach to economics that guarantees people a basic job at a basic decent income, and that then stems all of these vile effects that are connected to the problem of unemployment.
So let's talk about that for just a second, because I think that one of the other important factors here is that when you look at where we are as a nation, many people have given up on finding work at all. I mean, the numbers that are reported, the Krugmans of the world, et cetera, try to make us believe we're nearing full employment, which is really not true, is it? I mean, we're talking about neoliberalism has come through and wrecked what we have here and made it so that we're all fighting for table scraps. And so the people that have checked out would be checking in. What does that do to our productivity? What does that do to our ability to actually maximize our national output, if you will? If you want to just look at it from that standpoint, we're missing a lot of opportunities, aren't we?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, our friend Bill Mitchell in Australia did the calculations. At the peak of the crisis, every day we lost, or we gave up $10 billion of output because we were tolerating high levels of unemployment. Today, every day, we are foregoing $2 to $3 billion worth of output. So of course, there is, and we lack a whole bunch of goods and services that we can provide by simply mobilizing the unemployed. So look, one of the biggest problems, biggest myths that is perpetuated by the economic profession is that somehow there is this natural level of unemployment, that, we just have to, put up with this situation that simply not everyone can have a job. It's not possible. That the economy can create only so many jobs, and that's the most that we can achieve. So, you really have to think hard to accept this idea, this notion that there will be 17 million people out there who really want a well-paying job, a full-time, well-paying job, and somehow someone is telling you that that's just not possible, that they just can't have it. And so unemployment is a problem by design. You can simply design a better system. There's nothing natural about a certain level of unemployment. It is true that the private sector doesn't create full employment. That is natural, so-called natural for the private sector not to create full employment. But of course we have public policy, and there's nothing natural about public policy employment.
So, okay, so, when we're talking about, neoliberalism, I mean, for many of us, just to be fair, full disclosure, many of us were very against Hillary Clinton for a host of reasons, not the least of which is an understanding of what happened the last time a Clinton was in the White House with the budget surplus and bragging about deficit reduction and celebrating welfare reform, the personal responsibility, whatever act. There's so many things that came out of there that people, still hold on to dear life like it was good. And there's a real trade-off with the ignorance that came out of buying into the badge of the D and the badge of, the Clintonism. Regardless of your political identity, neoliberalism is a bipartisan disorder. And it has really, really infected us. And I see the job guarantee as the kryptonite for neoliberalism. I see it as the one surefire way to bring neoliberalism at least into check. And there's many other things we have to do once we get that basics taken care of. But can you talk to me a little bit about how neoliberalism has damaged our nation and our employment and our has pushed us to private credit a little bit? Can you discuss that?
Okay, so neoliberalism means many things to many people. Most people think, neoliberalism is all about sort of empowering the private sector and shrinking the government, balancing budgets, etc. It's not quite that. It is true that neoliberalism is very strongly about privatizing public services, but it is also a system of very large government, very large contracts to private firms, very large subsidies to certain sectors in the economy, very large military state. So it is not a small government kind of model. Neoliberalism is a very strong-armed government model, but largely serving very narrow interests, largely, a very, very highly financialized economy and financial interest. So it is also a model that uses balancing the budget as again, the myth of the need to balance the budget as a tool to basically privatize these welfare programs that we have enjoyed in the post-war era that have been very successful. So what is, of course, divorces the offer of employment from the profitability of employment. So in that sense, it does provide a check on the private sector. It kind of turns the tables a little bit and ask the private sector, look, you want workers, you better provide decent living conditions. And we know that this works pretty well because usually it's the public sector that sets the standard for pay, for for benefits, etc. And then the private sector kind of matches those. So, private sector has no, real interest in increasing their labor costs unless they are forced to do so. And the job guarantee essentially does that. It provides the basic that the private sector has to match. It also provides an alternative mode of provisioning. Like I said, whether it is childcare, whether it is community gardens, whether it is environmental care, if these things are provided through public service and not for profit, it also changes a little bit the power relationships between people and firms. So I don't have to go and buy the crappy food that is being sold to me on the market when I have a very nice CSA right next to my home, and I can get my produce there. So it does transform economic relations and power relations.
So one of the things we always see this, and I don't know when we've ever said this. I mean, our ability to print money is limitless. We can do that if we want to. I mean, there is a limit though where we hit, whether we have to start making trade-offs for inflation and so forth. Once we get to full employment, once we're either offset the leakages from being a net importer, et cetera. So can you talk to our people here a little bit, because they try to insert things. It's not their fault. This is just what they've heard elsewhere. They try and insert thoughts that they've heard elsewhere, like, hey, well, there's limits to this, aren't there? Well, of course, there's some limits. It's just about what you want, right? So can you talk a little bit about sectoral balances and how that kind of sets the bar when you're looking at an economy, how that plays into assessing the needs of an economy to keep it floating? It's not slapshot. It's not like you're just shooting a gun in the sky and hoping it lands. I mean, there's some pretty scientific ways of looking at the flows, are there not?
Yeah. So the first thing is that we have to debunk the myth that the government is running out of money and that we can't afford the programs that we need. The second thing is that when we talk about affordability, we need to think not in terms of financial resources, but real resources. Do we have the steel to rebuild our bridges? Do we have the qualified care workers to provide childcare and elderly care? Do we have the fish nets to do eel monitoring in the river? These are the kinds of questions that we need to be asking, not whether the government has money, because in our modern system, as we discussed, in a sovereign monetary system, the government is the monopoly issuer of the currency. They do not run out of paper currency or electronic digits or dollars, because they're the source of dollars. So this is a completely misdirected, it completely misdirects the focus of the public. People are so upset and obsessed and worried with the budget, or at least they're not really worried, but at least the politicians are creating that phobia and fear of the deficit. And it is the wrong place to look for the problem. We have the money. We need to ask whether we have the resources to provide for what we need. So in other words, we can issue all the social security checks we need to issue. The question is, what will the retirees buy with those social security checks? Will we have the goods and services to provide for both people who are working and who have retired? Have we created a strong enough economy to provide for all of their needs in terms of the real stuff that they want? And so in that sense, the conversation has to shift about what is genuine affordability. Steve, are you seeing my comment?
Yeah, I just did. That's what I was going to say is I can talk for a moment while you get your charger.
Please do. Yes, apologies.
That's not a problem.
I'll be right with you.
No problem. Thanks. So, folks, while Pavlina is getting her charger here real quickly, I just wanted to make some comments. You'll see some of the things that you've heard me talk about in the past. Federal taxes don't fund spending. The federal government is the issuer of the currency. Congress is the one that writes the bills and ultimately holds the purse strings. The Federal Reserve, for those people out there that fetishize the Fed, it handles monetary policy, okay? In other words, interest rates, driving a target interest rate, the Fed funds rate, et cetera. So we have fiscal policy controlled by Congress. We have monetary policy controlled by
Apologies.
the Fed.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Give me 1 second. So if you think about the difference here, this is not an act of the Federal Reserve stepping in to give us a job guarantee. This requires an act of Congress. You got to know your government, your basic civvies, right? Congress is the one that controls the purse strings. So all the people with their fist in the air about the Fed, okay, maybe there's something to mend the Fed someday. Maybe, bottom line is elect a progressive and you'll get progressives nominated to the Board of Governors. But if you keep electing neoliberals, you're going to get neoliberals on with the Board of Governors and you're going to get neoliberal policies. So it really comes down to who you elect. And our Congress is who writes the bills. So let me bring Pavlina back in. Pavlina, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm sorry, there's so many moving parts.
No, it's all good.
So correct me. I don't know if you heard my little dissertation there, description between monetary policy and fiscal policy and putting the finger of blame where it belongs with Congress. People tend to focus. There's so many books written. I think I always keep this one handy just so I can make a mockery of people a little bit, just jokingly. But this book right here is like, The Creature from Jekyll Isle. They act like I've never read it. Well, I've got it. I used to be one of those guys that read it too. Now it's just a, paperweight. But talk a little bit about the difference between fiscal policy, monetary policy, and possibly even, if you don't mind, discuss any relationship with the Fed that may or may not be known or unknown as it pertains to making us whole. Because I think there's a great deal of misunderstanding between what the two do. Can you talk about that?
All right. Yes. Okay. So first of all, the Treasury is the fiscal agent along with Congress of the government, and they're responsible for spending and for taxation. So any and every program that the government undertakes, whether it is a military program, whether it is public investment, public education, whatever, subsidies, virtually every program goes through Congress, gets a vote, the Treasury then spends to meet those objectives. Monetary policy is policy exercised by the central bank, the Federal Reserve, and that is a policy that largely is connected to setting interest rates and lending. The Federal Reserve does not spend. They lend. They provide dollars or reserves, dollar reserves, to the banking system in order to clear payments. But this is an important distinction because all the dollars that end up in our pockets come from and spends these dollars, or if the government lends these dollars, right? So the spending comes from the fiscal authority, the lending comes from the monetary authority. Of course, if those dollars are lent, they have to be repaid, they have to be returned. But if the government spends, like if the fiscal authority spends, let's say, $100 million, and then taxes from us 80 million back, the difference is 20 million. And so I end up with, the private sector ends up with 20 million in savings, which is what we call the deficit, the government deficit. So the only authority that can spend and tax is the fiscal authority. So if they spend more than they tax back, they leave the difference in the pockets of the private sector. And this is something that just has to be understood by everyone in order to demystify government deficits. They are essential. They are, if the private sector wishes to save, then somebody has to dissave, and that is the public sector. If the government wishes to balance its budget every year, this means that they have to spend 100 million and tax 100 million, which means that the private sector every year will have zero savings. Now, we don't want that, right? We want people to save for rainy days, for retirement, for education, etc. We want people to be fiscally prudent and save, but that is only possible if the public sector dissaves and allows us to, to save in dollars. That's that's fiscal policy. So deficits are essential. They are just by definition, they have to be there if the private sector is to save. Not all deficits are created equal. They're not all equally good or bad. What we're discussing here today is how government spends. Has the government spent in a way to create the jobs, the incomes, the public resources that we all ask of the government? Monetary policy deals with sort of the management of the financial system. Very much the large responsibility of the monetary authority is to regulate the financial system and financial instruments, which is something they do not do. What they largely are focusing on, playing around with interest rates in hope that the private sector will borrow to spend and to boost the economy. So it's credit driven. It's based on private sector debt and credit.
So I got to ask this question because Alice brought it up last night when he was describing the crux of neoliberalism. He said the goal was to enact public policy through private centers of debt, basically going into debt through the means you're talking about. Like that Milton Friedman basically, pushed us into this direction of monetary policy versus fiscal policy. So what I want to know from you, and I think that some of our guests really want to understand as well, when we talk about income inequality and we talk about the job guarantee big and all that stuff, what is it really that started this income inequality? Because you can see there was a point in time where income inequality was there, but it wasn't that bad. And then all of a sudden it just went crazy right through the roof. What does MMT do, and how does MMT bring income inequality back? When I say MMT, I don't mean MMT. I mean the prescriptions that we're putting to MMT. How do we bring that back into line here? Can you talk about that?
Yep. All right. So first, I want to say that, income inequality seems to be the norm for a market economy. The one period where there was compression and low income inequality was right after the few decades after the Second World War, and sort of during the golden age of the American economy. That was the one time that we had a much more equitable income distribution. Before, in the roaring 20s and earlier, there was very large income inequality, and we are returning back to those levels. So there are different types of income inequality, and so we can talk about income inequality just between different income groups. So you take households and then divide them up, and then you say, the richest 1% of households versus the poorest 99% of households. And, what we're seeing is that since the 70s and the 80s, when the economy grows, virtually all of that growth today goes to the very, very wealthy households, meaning that their incomes are rising, but the real incomes, the average real incomes of the bottom 90 or 99% haven't really budged in the last 2 decades. So in real terms, the vast majority of Americans are not doing well. So what do you do? How do you fix income inequality? I mean, there are 2 ways. One way is just to allow the economy to do what it's doing right now. Currently the economy doesn't create a lot of jobs. It doesn't create a lot of good jobs. And certainly we don't see robust job growth. So we take the system as it is, and we tax the wealthy and we redistribute to the poor. That's one way to change income inequality. It's not a particularly good way to do it necessarily, because you have a public sector, you have a government sector that doesn't need to tax from the rich to give to the poor, right? The government is the source of the dollar. So in my view, it's incumbent on the government to change the way income is created in the economy, to change the labor relations, essentially, to favor strong employment and generation of income through very strong and full employment. So you transform the way income is generated by basically guaranteeing a job to anyone and everyone, which would mean that those at the bottom of the income distribution, automatically their incomes will go up. So if you notice how the labor market works, if you have education and you're a high wage worker, you almost never suffer from unemployment or very short spells of unemployment. If you're at the bottom of the income distribution, poorer, maybe low skill, low education, you are the first person who's fired and the last person who is hired. So you have these, they have really hard time getting back in the labor market, building a career track, etc. And you also experience long spells of unemployment. So the job guarantee just is, because it provides a base floor, it captures those people that are having the most difficulty getting jobs and building their incomes. So basically you fix income inequality by raising the bottom. You raise the floor. Now, that's not going to do the job because you still may have a lot of income that accumulates at the top, but at a minimum, you have raised the floor very rapidly and to a level below which no one will fall. Now, if you believe that the top 1% are earning far too much income and they are consuming many of the resources that others can be consuming, then you might want to tax the rich, right? So that they don't have enough income or so that they can donate their income to public uses and public purposes, right? So the taxing function at the top can again improve income distribution, but you do it not because you need the money. You do it because there may be a misallocation of resources, of economic resources.
So that's the we're up against the hour, and I mean I'm not on a network, so I don't have a time limit, but I am respective of your time. The last thing I guess I really want to hit on hard is the idea that somehow or another, when we talk about wealth and income inequality, that somehow or another the people are lazy, that somehow or another that it's just bad choices and so forth. This economy is built to punish people. It really is. So one of the things that we've looked at is we know we can't get anything done in a progressive bubble. We've got to find a way to branch across the divide and find a way to sell these talking points to quote unquote Republicans and other people that maybe have a different set of sensibilities that might define the public purpose differently than progressives would. My thought is that MMT is the perfect tool to bridge the divide because number one, taxes don't technically fund spending. It's not like the government needs our tax dollars to pay for things. So there is an opportunity here to bridge a divide. At least that's how I see it. Can you close on that and just explain in your own words how we can reach across aisles and reach across divides to make macroeconomic reality a place that we can build from?
Look, you cannot tell who is working hard and who is not working hard unless you have guaranteed opportunities to everyone. If the opportunities are not there, we cannot tell who is doing the right thing to succeed in life. This is a game of musical chairs. If you have 9 chairs and 10 people, one person will be without a chair. So you can do whatever you can teach them work discipline and, better life choices. But at the end of the day, if there isn't a chair for that one person, they cannot sit. And it's the same with employment. Unless we guarantee employment for all, we really cannot figure out who has advanced because of merit, who has advanced because they've gotten better education. We need to be able to guarantee those opportunities so that then people can make the choices that they wish to make with their lives on the right terms. And so the job guarantee is a policy that should bridge the divide between left and right in the sense that we want to create something useful for the society. We want to be able to transform those plagued communities that suffer from so much, public squalor, unemployment, crime, etc. At the same time, we provide the kinds of goods and services that they need. And more importantly, we allow for people to participate in that process. Currently, very many people are left outside of economic life. They are not given a window of opportunity to step in and to participate in their own self-determination and their own livelihood in their community. So we just have to structure the system, the economy in such a way to provide those opportunities for all.
Well, look, we're at the hour, and I could go on and on with you. I really love talking. This warms my heart more than anything. When I'm done with this, I'm gonna go up and run and tell my fiance, "Do you know who I just talked to?"
You're very kind.
So much from me.
I enjoyed it. I hope your audience enjoyed it. I'm happy to talk again.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I just want to let you know that if there's any kind of resources that you can point them to close us out, just anywhere that you think, and we'll put these, we always give links to whatever we say. We never just say things. We always try to provide backup to what we say.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I work at Bard College. I'm a professor at Bard College, and I work at the Levy Economics Institute, where we have advocated the employer of last resort for, it was part of Minsky's life's work. And so if you're interested in reading a little more academic stuff, but also some of our policy proposals, like what might it look like? How would we design a job guarantee? Like what would it, for the United States? I saw some comments here. People were asking, has this program been tried elsewhere? And you can go on my own website. It's my name, Pavlina-Cherneva.com. I have a lot there on comparisons. Also, the Levy Economics Institute has a lot of papers on how the job guarantee has worked outside of the United States. And also, follow the blog New Economic Perspectives if you have not yet, as well as Bill Mitchell's work, who also is doing it at the buffer stock employment model. That's the other name for the job guarantee. So lots of resources, and good luck.
Good luck. Thank you. Okay, and trust me when I say this, I'm going to try. I'm not putting you on the spot, but I'm putting our people on the spot, and I'm going to avail you to this. We want to have a March for Economic Inequality on tax day. Folks, we want to do something, whether we're able to get all these stars and out there speaking with us or not. We want to be out there because this is so important. People are dying every day that we don't take care of this. There's suicides for unemployment. The catastrophic fallout from us not taking care of our own is so severe. Like, this drives me every single day of my life. And we're going to go out in DC and we're going to raise our fist in the air and we're going to tell them, hey, it's time you serve the public purpose. You're a public servant. You're not our rulers. You're our servants. Serve us now. So anyway.
Best of luck. Absolutely. If I can make one more plug, the Modern Money Network is having an event this Thursday. So just Google Modern Money Network, and the session is called Beyond Despair. And we have some really fantastic speakers, but my focus is going to be exactly on the aspect of unemployment is deadly in a literal sense. And we need to think about this very hard and think about how to address these public health problems with unemployment.
Thank you so much, Pavlina. This was wonderful. Folks, thank you for joining us. With that, I'm Steve Grumbine. This is Pavlina Cherneva. So long, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye.
And
listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. What? Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You tuned in to Reset Race, you'll find out who really about justice and really who fake. Lineage go back to US Southern plantations. Lineage, Jim Crow and mass incarceration. Redline and lynchings, we are old from this nation. You're not about justice if you ain't for reparations. MG the wise one, cousin mother intellectual. Samantha bringing fire, anti-black, we pressing you. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies. The backbone of the country, to win, you need our energy. Go on, see? Listening to Reset Race, you now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race, you're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them, put them back on the grill again. We grilling them, put them back on the grill again. We grilling them, back on the grill again. We grilling them, You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake.
Until you do right by me, everything you think about is gonna crumble.
Negroes should do whatever is necessary to bring about a complete solution to their problem. When I say whatever is necessary, they should have the flexibility to do whatever is necessary to solve the problem.